Hola, ¿cómo estás? Welcome back to Jason Bytes Back, episode number 59. Nueve. No, Navajo? For those of you who do not speak perfect Spanish like I do, that is episode number 59 of Jason Bytes Back, a series of which that I go back and respond to questions and or comments over the last 30 days. And yes, I have dogs and cats that fight in the background. As always, this series is brought to you by my awesome Patreon subscribers, the $5 and $10 names of which will be listed at the end of this video. Today's video just happened to include kind of a few more StarLink questions than other questions. That is because I am definitely highly impressed with StarLink. I had a chance to test it out. If you guys haven't checked that video out, I definitely recommend it. I basically got it for a few days, drove it around, tested it, and now I really want one. Which the funny thing is that I can now actually get access to one, but it was like way faster than I'm planning on. So it's going to go to my cousin, which he needs it for his house because he lives out in the country. So, you know, hey, much more needed. Not to mention my ongoing spousal battle of the friggin' ages that it's taken years and just can't seem to go away. But I digress. Let's jump right into the questions. And the first question is from the TF01. He says, a rack is a rack. It doesn't matter if it was sold by Penguin Data Center suppliers or American DJ. All that matters is that it holds your gear the way you want. True and false. Well, TF, I have to say this. My first rack I got at a bargain basement deal for an audio rack, basically. It wasn't deep enough. So that was the first issue. Second issue is the mounting. In a traditional rack, you have squares. And you put a little rack mount nuts in there, and then you can stick your stuff in there, and everything's peachy. In an audio rack, there's screws, so you have to screw stuff in. It's a completely different method, and if it's not deep enough, you're not going to get the same situation or the same setup, depending on what kind of servers you want to put in there. Yes, at the end of the day, you can make both of them work. I did make the old one work, but I wanted something smaller and I wanted something just a little less of a hassle to hook things into. So a rack is technically a rack, but there are different types of racks, different depths of racks, and different mounting racks. Okay, I bought this. I was kind of waiting on this. I got this off Amazon. I love this. Okay, that did not last very long. You know, surprisingly, the cat is just not as freaked out about the snake after the first time. I mean, this one is from Nicolas. He says, why wouldn't Silverstone offer a door with some LED indicators for HDD activity, or a door with a mesh grill or something similar like the Super Micro cases do, Applecom cases do? Honestly, I mean, every case maker has their own reasons and own decisions. I do know, at least I feel like sealing up that front on that Silverstone case that I have that allows to push the air into and on the hard drives and then through the back. So, you know, directing that air over the CPU cooler and exhausting that heat, you know, that definitely does, I think, personally help, but I'm not really an airflow / heat expert on that. But when you look at it and you're like, okay, I need to move the heat and it's all coming in from the side. If it's being dispersed from the front and the back, then you're just basically, you have a P2000 in that one just gathering heat. You got a CPU gathering heat. You have a RAM gathering heat. You need to get that heat exhausted in one direction. Next question is from Christopher. He says, you can show the video to the cops all day long, but they told me it wasn't admissible as evidence. The insurance companies, however, love videos that prove they are not liable. Well, Chris, this is in relation to the dash cam review that I did, and I can say that I personally know 2 people that a dash cam has saved them from liability and been admissible in court. One made it to court and actually had to use the evidence. The other one just avoided a ticket by pulling it up on his dash cam and saying, look what they did. So when you get into an accident, the cop goes out there and kind of predetermines who gets the ticket and who's at fault. And if you do have evidence to show that you're not at fault, then you can avoid getting that initial ticket in the process, which also helps with insurance. I don't know how the rest of that story played out as far as insurance and all that goes, but I do know 2 people directly who has had a positive experience from having a dash cam. Furthermore, I read through the comments and you elaborated a little bit more on the story, and something happened to you with oncoming traffic where there was no front license plate and you turned around and you followed him and caught it. Like, that was kind of a unique situation. So I wouldn't really say that it's a smart idea to use that one very specific, out of the ordinary situation to tell people that you can't use it in court, because you're just kind of spreading fake news at that point. There are a lot of people out there that try to pretend to get hit by cars or blame you. I mean, you get into an accident, you automatically want to try to avoid blame. Some people do. So having a dash cam, in my personal experience, is a very good safety measure for you financially. Let's just say that. Next question is from John on the Sonar on Radarr. He says, I hope you do an install and setup video for Prowlard. Yes, I am planning on it. It's been something that I've been trying to work on. I have a 12-volt Sun Gold power thing that I've been testing and working with. So they've been wanting to get that released. Plus, I've been dealing with a lot. So it is planned. That's my next R video. That is definitely going to be it. I've recorded a lot of the screen captures that I need. I just need to go through and make an outline and get everything actually recorded audio-wise in order to piece it all together. So I do apologize for the delay. I anticipated on having it out a lot earlier, but I just have not gotten to it. It's like the same thing with the Plex versus MB thing. I've been wanting to do that for 2 months, and I never get that started. So next question is from CS. I bet you are using Synology now since they sent you that sweet box to review, ? Now, this is on that little mini server that I'm selling, and you're right, but I don't really use it for that. So the Synology ecosystem when it comes to cameras, in my personal opinion, is not financially viable. The licensing per camera is kind of expensive, so if you're scaling it up to a massive amount of cameras, one, you are definitely limited by the hardware in the Synology NAS, and 2, it's just going to be more expensive, especially compared to something like Blue Iris. So Synology licenses are like $59 a camera, if I remember right, maybe $100 for 2 cameras, whereas Blue Iris is like $60, and you can hook up, I don't know, 50 or something. I don't know. It's 2 completely different worlds, though. One, you're building yourself. The other, it's more or less plug and play. So I do use the Synology NAS, however, to back up 2 cameras, because that's what I have licensing for, just for 24-hour recording, and I use it for just the internal home backup of every computer. Things like key data on my Unraid drive, not like media or anything like that, but key data on my Unraid drive, my main PC, laptop, etc. Those are all imaged up to the Synology NAS. And that's mainly because the Synology software has a very easy to use and automatic, intuitive. It's called the Home Backup for Business, or Business Backup for Home, or something like that. It installs on Windows machines and just runs as a service automatically whenever you want, and it's free, comes with the NAS. It's basically like a Cronus, but just comes with the NAS. Next question is from Sinks. He says, I'm wondering, did you have to configure anything in BIOS regarding the M.2 to 5 times SATA adapter? I've got one of my own, and it's supposed to be plug and play, but I've never gotten the drives to actually show up, neither in Explorer or disk part. Well, no. For me, that little attachment was just plug and play. However, I did notice that I have to have a drive attached to one of the SATA ports in order to, I guess you could say, maybe activate it on boot up. So when I was going through and testing drives and I had nothing plugged in, through anything that was plugged in through that M.2 adapter would not be recognized just as a hot swap. But when I plugged in a drive, rebooted the PC, and then tried it out, then I was able to hot swap it. So it's like on boot, and this could be motherboard dependent. On boot, it was it just needed something plugged in to activate it. Aside from that, though, that is a very unique piece of hardware, and it just kind of worked out of the box for me. Next question is from Tharisha. Jason, I have a 2060 KO Ultra that says otherwise about stacking that many thermal pads, double stacked 9mm pads, chewing gum, haha, and it works. Go EVGA. I mean, to clarify here, I definitely do not claim to be a thermal pad expert, nor have I really ran any kind of test between stacking thermal pads, but I guess I'm more just relying on like the common sense of like the more thermal pads you have, the more or the less effective they are at transferring the heat. I mean, can only go so far with a thermal pad. But again, that's just an assumption. Maybe you can have 9 or 20 millimeters of thermal pads and work the same, but in my head, it just doesn't make sense personally. Either way, all I had to do was add the thermal pads with that copper heatsink on the back, and then I changed out the Noctua fans, and now the SSD temperatures are pretty much under control. But it is a crucial SSD that does run hot just by nature. It's just that specific M.2 SSD, and realistically it's not going to be throttled too much because it's SATA, so it's not really a big deal. That was just more of like I'm uncomfortable with these temperatures being high, but turns out that's just what Crucial does. Next question is from Natal81Able. 25 watts in hibernation mode, maybe. I read it takes up to 150 watts all the time when being used. Yes. Probably. I personally have seen it at 120 watts. This is a StarLink satellite. But when I was running around, I was literally just running it off of one of the batteries, the quickest batteries that I grabbed, and I really didn't pay that much attention to power. That wasn't my focus. My focus was how long did it take to get set up in a different area? What kind of speeds was I getting? If I rotated it and it just readjusted itself and maybe connected to a different, location in the sky or satellite that would that change the speed? So the powers that I was seeing was really just like when I occasionally look over and be like, oh, hey, look, it's at 100 watts or it's at 25 watts or, I'm sitting here downloading something, it's sitting at 40 watts. Definitely like bare minimum focus on the power. Next question is from Finch Studio. I wonder how it works for people who live in heavily treed areas. That is actually a great question. When you're setting up StarLink, it is literally just like it needs to be able to see the sky clearly. So anything like trees or anything like that that's in the way is going to obstruct its ability to get the best signal possible. With StarLink, there are multiple satellites. And in my experience, it could adjust from this direction to this direction, and still get signal. So there are multiple satellites for it to connect to, but the less visibility you have of the sky, the less chance you have of having the fastest and most reliable connection available. The great thing with the StarLink though is with the app, it's like you can go up to where the satellite is, you can launch up the app, and there's a way that you can use your camera, point it at it or whatever, and then point it at the sky, and it's like, okay, this is the general area of where the satellite's going to be looking at, and it allows you to kind of scan the sky and get a percentage rating based off of like what obstructions you have, and it'll like recommend whether or not you should move the satellite. And if you live in an area where you literally cannot get a clear view of the sky because you have so many trees, you might have to look at an alternative solution like a giant pole, which they sell pole mounts for. So you can get a pole, stick it in your whatever yard and put it up over the trees. That way you do have a clear view. It'd be a pain in the butt to maintain if anything ever goes wrong, but I guess you could technically do that. Maybe a flagpole. Either way, the clearer the sky view, the better the connection, the faster the speeds. Next question is from Mary. She said, Plex is way too much trouble. You almost have to create everything from scratch. And if you lose power, do it again. I have the option on my TiVo, but still can't get it connected. Even friends have tried to get it to connect to my server. My bad rating is on Plex, not the video creator. Okay, well, you're not. When it comes to Plex, Plex is definitely software where you are maintaining your own server. You're maintaining all kinds of different variables, how you're transcoding things, whether or not you're transcoding things, what clients you're going to be using, manually connecting things, managing your own media library versus TVs, movie shows, etc. All of the operating systems, everything. It's like nerding out. And if every time you lose power, you lose your configuration, then there's a user error somewhere there where you're not doing it right. I don't know what your setup is. I don't know anything about it, and I'm definitely not here to troubleshoot it. But I'm just saying that if you lose power and you have to reset everything up, like every single time, then you're doing something wrong. Yes, you can have critical data loss when you have power loss. That can happen, and that is a reason why I am super obsessed with backup UPS batteries, because I do not want to risk data loss. However, I can still have a loss of power and have a very high chance that my Unraid server is just going to boot up, probably run a parity check just to make sure and be just fine. I guess some people are meant to run a Plex server and some people are meant to have a Netflix subscription. You just have to decide what kind of person you are. Next question is from Sean. So the owner had it set up at the registered address before you used it. Just curious, I have one coming out and wanted set up a few miles away from the registered location. Yes, Sean, for the StarLink, he had it set up at his house, which was a few miles away. Jeez. He had it registered at his house, which is a few miles away from my house, but I took that thing on a 30-mile radius journey, and it worked everywhere I went. I stopped at multiple places in between, and it worked every single time. So if you're registering at your house and you want to use it a few miles away, in my very limited few-day experience of going in a 30-mile radius, it should work. If it doesn't, sell it to me. Next question is from Daniel McGarry. Says, not seeing any wired connections. How would you integrate into a setup that is more wired than wireless? If used as a backup, would you just manually connect any device to it? Well, actually, there are different versions of the StarLink satellite. And I think the older one actually comes with an Ethernet port, but the new one, you have to buy, I want to say it's a $40 dongle that connects to the StarLink router. And then you can have an Ethernet connection and you can plug it into whatever network you want. For me, whenever I do go down this route and I do set up the backup internet, I will have to figure out a way to have a dual WAN, having one WAN port as a backup. But no, I do not want to have to automatically connect anything. Ultimately, I want it running as a secondary, always on backup internet. That way, if my main internet goes down, it can run through the StarLink internet automatically on my network with everything intact. Yes, you have to buy a dongle, but once you do that, you can go into the app on the StarLink and you can bypass the Wi-Fi and completely disable the Wi-Fi feature in the StarLink hardware and then just use your own, which is definitely something that I plan on using with my cousin's lake house, because the one that I'm getting access to is probably going to go to my cousin, either his house or his lake house, and it's going to be hooked up to a separate Wi-Fi router. I'm not saying the StarLink Wi-Fi router is bad, but it's not fantastic. So it is an option. You just got to buy a dongle. Next question. This one's from Eric. He says, if you mount it on an RV, just remember when and how that will affect the motors and the dish over time. Absolutely, Eric. It is a bad idea to mount the basic like StarLink version that I had to an RV. They are actually, if I remember right, developing a version of StarLink that is more suited to an RV mount. In my testing, I actually strapped it inside the bed of my truck. That way there wasn't a ton of wind, and it was a very limited testing thing just to see how good it was while driving and turning and all that other stuff. I absolutely would not want to run that thing on top of an RV because it does have the motors and it does automatically adjust, and there's no way I'd want to drive down the road at 70 miles an hour or whatever and have that motor constantly fighting the wind. I feel like it would break in probably like a day. But once they come out with an RV version, it's going to be like probably the RV internet standard. Next question is from I Kick Uranus. $100 a month for backup internet is just insane. You'd be better off with a Stargate so you can just dump all your excess cash off-world. Also, the proprietary cable and lack of Ethernet is a non-starter. I agree. $100 a month for backup internet, especially because my main internet is $180 a month. $100 a month is kind of extreme. But it's so fast. And when internet goes down, like, what do you do? Like, personally, when I don't have internet, I just like wander around. You know, like I'm almost like a zombie. I don't know what to do. But this is definitely situational. It's kind of one of those things like if you're running a business that you absolutely need some internet in order to function as a business, $100 a month, definitely very cheap. If you're just a nerd and you want to spend $100 a month on backup internet, it's still expensive. So it's just situational, really. I guess my thing is not only is it backup internet, but if I get a couple cables and you like install it or whatever, then technically you could like take it with you when you go out and venture out into the wild. Right? I got a once a year camping trip thing. It would be amazing to have like some badass Wi-Fi down there. Next question is from Greg C. I don't know why people keep the movie in Radarr once they are happy with the copy they have. Delete it. I don't want 2,700 movies in my Radarr. That's silly. Well, Greg, there's actually there could be, depending on your usage, a good reason to keep all the movies in your Radarr. I touch base a little bit with it in Radarr, but it's lists. So you can set up Radarr to import lists automatically. These lists are automatically updated and it syncs with your server. It says, hey, what movies do I have? And you can configure it to automatically add movies from that list. So in the case of you having a movie and the list has that movie on the list and you set this up for automatic list adding movie downloading thing, then you might end up with some doubles. But if you keep everything in Radarr, I mean, yeah, you're going to be bogging something down, maybe using a little bit more memory. But if you keep everything in Radarr, it'll say, hey, I already have this downloaded, so don't do it again. So it really just kind of depends on what sort of automation you're looking for. Personally, I was exploring this R series with the idea, the intent of full automation. So keeping it in Radarr, not really that big a deal to me. Next and last question from Stony Eagle says, all the doggo needs is a helmet, sunglasses, and bandana collar. My dog used to love sprinting with me in the, I got a little icon here, with me riding my scooter. She reached 35 kilometers an hour. Wow, that sounds fast. Hey Siri, what's 35 kilometers an hour to miles per hour?
35 kilometers per hour is 21.75 miles per hour.
Perfect. 20 miles an hour. That's pretty decent. A couple things here. Riding on my four-wheel with my dog is absolutely fun. I love it. She is scared to get on it while I'm at the house, but when she's on it, she is happy as heck. And she's just driving around. She's got the tongue hanging out. She's just looking at people. It's like, she enjoys the crap out of it. Yes, if I want to continue doing this or go any faster than 10 mile an hour, which for the most part, 10 to 15 mile an hour, I don't really go over that. I'm just kind of trotting around the neighborhood type of deal. But yes, eventually I do want to get something to protect her eyes. And on top of that, I need to get her like a vest and then get myself a vest so I can like click her to me. That way she can't fall off or anything like that. That is like a big priority for me because whenever I do have this camping trip and I'm going to be taking the four-wheeler out, I plan on taking her to some places that she's going to be riding along with just because she won't be able to swim across the river. So I will need to attach her to me in order to get across. So yes, that's something that's really cool. Also, I kind of had a Ferris Bueller's Day Off moment. To make a long story short, I drove her around and she was really happy, whatever. And then I decided to drive to the end of the block, around a corner, drop her off, make sure everything was good, start rolling, and then drove 20 mile an hour back home. So I'm in my four-wheeler in my neighborhood, which I'm sure my neighbors hate me for. If you happen to watch this, don't hate me for that. But I'm driving 20 mile an hour back and she's just hauling ass, going through the yards, jumping like around stuff and doing things. And like, she's not on the street, like she's just running through people's yards and she's going around obstacles and then she'd speed up to catch up. And then it was great. But anyways, so down the block, around the corner, there were some kids that were playing and they were drawing the chalk. That's what it is. They were drawing something on the driveway with chalk. And it was like this big and there was like kids separated. So it had like a Ferris Bueller moment because I come around there and she runs through, goes through a different a set of cars, sees this thing on the ground, doesn't know what it is, doesn't even care, and just leaps over it. And kids are like, woo, wow, and they're like, oh, that's cool, whatever they yelled. And I'm laughing. Like, it was just this brief moment. I was like, this is freaking awesome. So yeah, that's the story. But yeah, little moments like that, I'm just like, yes. Also, I can't really do that too much in my neighborhood because I'm kind of pushing my luck driving it anyway. So there's that. Well, guys, that is it for today. If you guys have any questions, comments, or concerns that you would like addressed in the next Jason Bytes Back video, make sure to post them in the comments section down below or in any video that I post over the next 30 days. Again, all of my $5 and $10 Patreon awesome subscribers will be listed at the end of this video. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe below and have yourself a great day. Okay, so I got this off Amazon. This is the dumbest thing. It's like 20 bucks, right? I put it on the ground, it crawls around, it senses stuff, it backs up, it does it. The cat was like freaked out about it for a total of like 5 seconds. I want to say maybe 3 minutes, right? And then after that, she just kind of looks at it like, the only problem is that Luna likes to eat things, and I had to stop her from eating this because she will wait till the snake, because it'll literally just crawl around and back up and go in different areas and stuff like that. So she'll wait till it turns around and then she'll bite the tail. So, not a good habit to train. I think teaching Luna to stay away from bright red and black snakes, or any snakes in general, is probably the best idea. For the cat, doesn't matter as much. It's an indoor cat, and if it gets out, well, good luck anyway. But since Luna does go outside a lot more than the cat, I think it's kind of a bad idea to allow her to attack this without, acknowledging the potential danger a snake could have. So it's kind of like a fun toy, but also kind of like, is this a good idea toy type of thing. It's kind of cool though. The only thing that it has is this tongue, right, that goes in and out and it kind of moves, and it has a sensor when it hits something, and then it has like an infrared thing that tells it when a cat or a dog is near. But if it gets on carpet or a rug, it gets stuck. If it gets up to a ledge, it goes right off of it. So it is completely dumb, just goes back and forth with very minimal control. So, definitely requires supervision to keep going, and it doesn't last that long. I mean, as far as excitement, because the cat will just sit there and stare at it like, yo, I'm not dumb. Well, I mean, I am, but not that dumb. Case in point.